Namaskar and welcome to Daily Global Insights, episode number 256. A shout out to our viewers to like this program so that it can reach its maximum potential. Today is Friday, and here are the main points. The Department of Homeland Security forms a task force to rebuild the Trump's Remain in Mexico policy to stall the border surges, but it will need Mexican government's cooperation. Congress averts government shutdown, remains in stalemate over the debt limit. Chief Economic Advisor of India forecasts an average growth of greater than 7% this decade for India. Countering China is top priority, says Japanese PM elect in an interview. Iran finance minister says war with Israel already started. The fire that was reported occurring at the IRCG secret missile base. To start with, let's welcome Sridhar ji. Sridhar ji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel, sir.
Forward to another wonderful Friday.
And in United States news, the DHS forms a task force to rebuild the Trump's Remain in Mexico policy to stall the border surges, but this will need Mexican government's cooperation. Sridhar ji, there's also another news that I'm hearing that the court has revived the government powers to expel illegal aliens during pandemic as 85,000 plus Haitians make their way towards the US border. The US administration appears to be clueless. We'll start with these two items. Sridharji, your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I think it's now become very apparent. Many pundits, including Mr. former President Mr. Obama, has stepped up and stated that there is no way that this thing can go on. What is this thing? This meaningless border incursions and people being let in. There is no way that this can be sustained. It's strange that two things are now being considered. One is, first, the Remain in Mexico policy is being considered. For that to be successful, you need the support of the Mexican administration. I think that members of Mr. Blinken, Mr. Mayorkas, and there's another representative, they're planning to visit Mexico to look at this. I think the second issue is that they had this challenge around who they can expel. You remember that they disempowered the powers of the Customs and Border Patrol in terms of what they can do at the border. So now they are reviving that basically to say that anybody who is coming in through the country during this pandemic can be expelled. So they seem to have obtained a court order. As they always say, too little, too late, and the surges continue and it remains uncontrollable, and the administration don't know how to stop it.
And Congress averts government shutdown, remains in stalemate over debt limit. Nancy Pelosi delays voting on infrastructure bill as the Democratic Party factions feud. We've been telling you viewers about the regressives, the moderates and the liberals, and let's get the latest on this from Sridharji. Sridharji, your thoughts?
My thoughts are that I think the first and most important point is this power politics between the progressives stroke regressives with the mainstream Democrats continue. So the agenda seems stalled unless it is intertwined with many non-related activities such as abortion funding and amnesty for illegal immigrants, climate control funding, etc. So what did they do? They were able to get 10 Republican votes. This is the moderate, Republican votes, which basically helped avert the shutdown, which means they can continue to make some make some important payments. But the debt limit, if you don't increase the debt limit, then they cannot borrow, Treasury cannot borrow any further to fund. And that could also result in default in the interest rate payments. And that is falling due around, that's overdue, but then beyond October 15th, that runs into heavy water or headwinds. As far as the Nancy Pelosi is concerned, if you all recall, she wanted to do your voting on the 1.2 trillion infrastructure bill or the $546 billion infrastructure bill that was agreed to by Biden with a bipartisan set of Republicans and the Democratic Party. Mr. Biden has reneged. No vote has been taken. Mr. Madam Pelosi has reneged. She had contemplated taking vote yesterday. Today is Friday. She has again delayed the vote. Why? Because the progressives are saying, if you don't get my reconciliation budget of $3.5 trillion, you are not going to get the infrastructure bill through. So it's stalled again.
Sridharji, this is something that is probably a bit of a payback for Madam Pelosi, because if you remember, you and I were discussing about this meaningless second time impeachment that she single handedly piloted and carried through. And even as the January 6th hearings now progress, we are seeing that there has been a lot of hyperbole. So the thing is, when you can't follow through with whatever you try to do, there is going to be some blowback. The way I say it, sir, is Madam Pelosi does not have the same kind of grip over the Democratic Party as she used to. And let's see how this thing plays out. This is just my opinion, sir. Let's go on. It is alleged that Chuck Schumer promised Manchin, this is the moderate, on signed document reconciliation package would cost 1.5 trillion, and Manchin says the reconciliation bill is dead on arrival with taxpayer funded abortion. So it's coming back to that one thing that the Republicans will absolutely have no truck with, abortion. But here is a moderate Democrat saying that do not connect the two. And I think I see the point. How has the abortion got to do with infrastructure, sir?
Well, I think this is the reconciliation process to get the budget approved. The infrastructure bill, which is the 1.2 or 546 billion extendable, what the regressives are saying is, notwithstanding Manchin and 10 Republicans have agreed, they will not get that, they will not vote for that bill. The reason being, they are not getting the budget reconciliation bill done. The budget reconciliation is supposed to be 3.5 trillion. According to some reports, Manchin was told it will not be more than 1.5 trillion in a written document. Now, obviously, Mr. Schumer has reneged the actual budget reconciliation. The reconciliation process used to get the budget done is 3.5. When you do that, if it is a straight 3.5 trillion, even then you are not going to have, Manchin for it, because he has basically, Kristen Sinema and Manchin have stated there is no way the government can afford this type of budget. It is impossible with so much of taxes and uncontrolled expenses. Depending on which day you wake up, you will find in this 3.5 trillion from funding abortions as part of the expanded Medicare program to a whole range of other items, amnesty for illegal immigrants, expansion of the Medicare, kind of reduction of the the pharmacy prescription payments for medication, etc., etc., climate accord, all that has been intertwined and tagged. Remember, they went to the parliamentarian to get an adjudication whether the amnesty can be tagged. She came up with a ruling, there is no way you can tag the amnesty. Immediately, the word you use, regressives or progressives, said, we must disobey the parliamentarian and move forward because we have the mandate. So this is what is going on, which is namely they've got away from the core, but they're focusing on all the periphery which forms the basic agenda of the progressives, and they're trying to tie it to the budget.
No, Joe, your Build Back agenda is collapsing for now in the Democratic controlled House. Inflation confirmed at the highest level in 40 years from April through June than any other time since 1982. Sridharji, inflation has been one of those red signals that that America always pays very, very close attention to because of the fact that it is a service-based economy. Your thoughts, sir, where is the Biden administration headed now? What is going to be happening in the next few weeks, in your opinion, sir?
In the next few weeks, you're going to see compromises being made, Biden getting involved, some of the moderates' arms being twisted. So there would be in some mechanisms used to make sure the infrastructure bill as well as the reconciliation process for getting the, whether it is 3.5 trillion or 2.5 trillion, 3 trillion, we are going to see some bill getting passed. It's not going to continue on this impasse. So there will be some arm twisting and there'll be some gives and takes, but it's eventually going to get passed. It may not have any Republican support. That is why it is called reconciliation. A reconciliation process, you can get what you call as the money bill passed with a very simple majority. Not the right way to do it, not the right way even some of the mainstream Democrats would support, but they're going to have a compromise and things to move forward. As far as inflation is concerned, we have stated already that the inflation numbers are very high, and this is the Commerce Department, the Commerce Secretary saying, look, the April to June quarter has witnessed the highest inflation in 40 years, basically because there's so much of cash. Demand has skyrocketed. Supply chains are impacted. Energy prices are cut. You all can see the cost of the the oil. The oil is now around $80. So all this is playing a part. And as again, Joe is clueless. And even the Fed Secretary, the Fed
Excuse me.
Secretary, Dr. Powell has basically said that somehow he will try to control the bond vigilantes, but they are now beginning to flag that it looks like the inflation is a runaway wreck.
And the Senate confirms Joe Biden's nominee, referred to as eco-terrorist nominee Tracy Stone Manning, to lead the Bureau of Land Management. 49 Republicans helped pass billions in welfare for Afghans brought to the United States. The Senate also shoots down attempts to impose more vetting for Afghan evacuees. Sridharji, I'm trying to make sense of this. Why did the Senate shoot down the attempt to impose more vetting? Because is it too late, or what are your thoughts?
Promises were made to them. They basically sacrificed their lives or took risks, and they were in the front end in helping United States serving meet its objectives during the Afghan occupation or Afghan reign. So there is an obligation to them. Whether it is a sitting time bomb, time will tell. They even have what you call diluted the rules for issuance of driver's license. In many states, driver license is considered a nominal ID from a voting point of view. So, from driver's license to vetting for any kind of prior criminal records, as well as generously funding them for their settlement. I think it's about $6.5 billion. I think we are beginning to see another train that has that's probably left the station, and it is a bit too late. One will know the consequences of this in due course of time in the future, what it means, because these are not normal kind of techniques that is used in terms of preservation of the security of a nation.
Another request to all our viewers to like this program as we try and reach a wider audience. Rising reports of breakthrough infections fuel vaccine skeptics and dampen reopening plans. Sridharji, what are these new breakthrough infections?
Well, we have reported we have been ahead of time in Daily Global Insights, and suddenly somebody, it comes to light of many. Hey, there's more than 10 million people now active in the United States. There's close to 1 million people in Texas. There's close to, $2.6 million people in California. Lo and behold, in United States, in New York, we have crossed 350,000 active cases. Suddenly, people are beginning to realize by looking at the numbers, we have vaccinated about 65% of the population or 60% of the population, but this thing is, growing rapidly in number. So there are two problems, the two challenges, whether all these lockdowns and the rules that they laid down, whether they are effective. And the second is whether the vaccinations that are being given or were given is effective against probably new variants that have already made its way into United States.
And let's take a look at India-based news. Free trade agreement is the next frontier in the US-India relationship, says the United States-India Business Council president. The chief economic advisor of India forecasts an average growth of greater than 7% this decade for India. India's external debt rose to USD 570 billion by 2.1%, while the NRI deposits rose 8.7% to 141.7 billion. Sridharji, the first important thing is the bilateral trade with the United States. This is US IBC, who is based in is America, saying this. Your thoughts on where that is headed, and also on the growth of India, sir?
So first and foremost, the bilateral trade agreement is being touted. It has not been signed as yet. It even was not signed during the Trump regime because of some of the tariffs and barriers that India places. So there is a general disposition that that Modi government will be able to unlock the clutter, uh, in conjunction with aspirational desires of the Biden administration. If I have to if I'm a betting man, I would probably say it will be either marginal progress or, very small progress. In specific areas, there will be wide range, which is, we have already seen cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, COVID vaccine exports, etc., etc. And some of the defense areas, you may begin to see expansion of the relationship. But it's not going to be open slather. There are, what you call dows on both sides of the fence, United States and India. So it will be again, moderate progress. As far as the economics is concerned, I think India's growth of 7% is good. But if you ask any economist, they would say a sustained growth of 8 to 10% over a decade is required for India to really get over the hump. But otherwise, 7%, trundle along. Well, 7% was achieved even in the last 3, 4, 5 years, barring the COVID period. So really, to step up, you really need to get past that 8%. But chief economic advisor is making a brave statement. The two headline numbers, which is namely the debt, 570 billion. Remember, we have made this that the India's foreign exchange reserves is around 650 billion. So, in other words, it is net positive. Reserves is greater than the debt, but the debt increase is an indication of that there is more imports coming in. So, which is what you are beginning to see the external debt begin to rise. As far as the non-resident deposits, that is continuing. That means India is still a good attractive destination, and people are being built. This is non-resident Indians sending money into India.
India's manufacturing activities rise due to strong demand and easing of COVID restrictions, PMI movement. Core sectors output also grew by 11.6% in August. This consisting of coal, crude oil, natural gas, refinery products, fertilizers, steel, cement, and electricity. Indian government plans a PLI scheme to promote domestic manufacturing of power equipment. There is something that I want to add first, but I'll let you take a stab at it, Sridharji.
Well, I think the rise in manufacturing activities is a direct result of the PMI grew in August as well as in September. Is a reflection of two factors. One is that there is a growing demand with India easing restrictions and better control of the COVID situation, so which is very positive. Also, exports. They have targeted the manufacturing services exports to grow at a target of 400 billion. They seem to be reasonably, doing well. These core sectors, which is the very heavy segment of the industry, the coal, the crude oil, the natural gas, the refineries, the steel, etc. That is, big ticket items. They have been growing, and these are very captive areas. They have been growing month over month in the current financial year. We reported the core sectors growing even in June and July. So it seems to follow the continuum on that. As far as the PLI, PLI program has been successful. It started with mobile. Now they are extending into wide range. They're now moving it into the power equipment domain. The whole objective of the PLI is to attract capital, co-investment by the government. Incentives are around the sales with the capped kind of tax limits. But the whole objective here is substitution. There's a lot of substitution taking place on the imports, with a lot of manufacturing occur through these program-linked incentive programs. So at least that part of it is clearly the government is working. But the question is, can you do better? Always in India, the case is you can do better.
And Chinese soldiers are building accommodations and military infrastructure along the LAC, including missile defense systems. as India deploys the M777 howitzers on the line of actual control, China flip-flops and says it opposes arms race. How ironic. India's Defense Ministry approves procurement of military gear worth $1.7 billion dollars from domestic manufacturers. Here's a couple of things. One is that in power equipment, this is something that I forgot to mention last time, but I'll just add now. In power equipment, there are control elements called SCADA, Systems Control and Data Acquisition. These are huge controllers that actually control the electricity supply throughout India, grid to grid, switching on and off, how to supply power to the state that needs it more, and so on and so forth. What I'm hearing is that the SCADA software control is still in the hands of the people who supplied the infrastructure, and they don't necessarily live in India. Now connect the dots about how for 13 hours in Mumbai there was a power outage, and there was an assertion by China that they can bring India's grid down anytime they want. Now, next thing is, Siddharji, we also have with our hangouts with Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar, we have also talked about the how India's arms and ammunition has been coming along really well, about in trying to make sure that India can source its requirements from within, and this is a very impressive number, sir. 1.7 billion from domestic manufacturers.
It is. It is. We have again been covering at a macro level because General Ravi Shankar and other people are experts in this specific domain. But at a headline level, we have been saying that India has now equipped itself reasonably well and has both defensive and offensive capability. Infrastructure has been developed along the thing that they are also developed capabilities to house people in sub-zero temperatures to the hot conditions and at high altitudes. This is frustrating the hell out of the Chinese because the Chinese thought that it would be a cakewalk. And as they begin to augment their infrastructures, they find that India is already, lifting its capability in terms of the defensive, especially the armed resources. The howitzers, the missiles, the missile batteries. Almost the entire fleet of the Rafale planes are hovering around the Sukhoi jets, etc. So I think they are worried about as to when India will stop. And then they make this observation, India must stop the arms race, while on the contrary, they go about doing exactly the opposite. So as you rightly pointed out, that the more and more self-reliance on supplies and capabilities and enhancing it is really helping India to be prepared in the event of a war.
Adani Group finalizes a 35-year deal to build and operate Colombo Port's West Container Terminal. Tata Group is in the lead to take over Air India. Sridharji, what are your thoughts on a private company taking over Air India? One can make the argument that Air India used to be a Tata company before they nationalized it, the government nationalized it.
My take is it is coming home. It never, so it was never deserved to leave home. It was a very arbitrary decision to have been nationalized by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru at that point of time. I think it's 1954, if my memory lane is correct.
You're getting his video back in just a moment, please. Yeah.
Sorry. Due to those circumstances, they made very clear. You never even gave an opportunity. You took something away. Over the period of time, to be honest, if I have to be, I think Indian government has ruined the infrastructure and capabilities to the extent that it has driven it to bankruptcy. I'm glad that the Maharaja is back where it belongs. I hope that it is fully consummated and not just they are the lead. But I think in my humble view, it's a very good decision.
Well, the last tagline, if I remember correctly, was "We will go overboard to get you on board. So we will see how things play out for Air India. Best of luck. Some of India's private hospitals have cancelled Sputnik 5 orders with a staggering rise in the manufacture of domestic vaccines. We've talked about this in the past. India is going to be buying 27 to 28 crores vaccines in October from SII and Bharat Biotech in vaccines, and total vaccinated doses crosses 890 million, and active cases continue to fall and are currently at 275,224. Sridharji, your thoughts?
My thoughts are that in 1 month, they're going to buy somewhere between 270 to 280 million vaccines. That's in October. So effectively, it has made the domestic manufacture, the overseas, suppliers who have used India as a manufacturing venue for domestic consumption is redundant. You remember, India declined both Moderna and Pfizer, but they're going to be supportive of the single dose J&J vaccine. But it's a very impressive number, 270 to 280 million. So India is very much moving towards export of 1 billion vaccines as was promised in 2022. Because we are manufacturing 270 to 280 million. India is not going to require that amount of vaccines once it gets past its domestic need of, I would say, 2 billion doses. It's almost halfway down the mark of 890 million vaccines already complete. So in some way, in the next week or so, we will cross the 900 million vaccine doses and moving towards 1 billion. Actually, single dose is around 650 million. Double doses, or those who are fully vaccinated, is around 250 million. The efficacies have held out relative to other countries, and you can see the number of active cases that is currently prevalent. It is less than the state of New York. New York has 340,000 active cases. India has 270,000. Just sets the context.
And let's take a look at global news now. Fumio Kishida, the LDP prime ministerial nominee, is unlikely to break Abenomics, and he's going to sustain Abe's programs. Countering China is top priority, says Japanese PM-elect in an interview. The focus is artificial intelligence as Japan rushes to hire 270,000 artificial intelligence engineers as lockdown restrictions ease. Kishida to name Shunichi Suzuki as Japan's new finance minister. Your thoughts on what's happening in Japan, sir?
Yeah, I think that there has been a request for a separate session on what's happening around Japan. We'll probably try and do that. To give you a headlines, Fumio Kishida is going to be elected formally as the prime minister on Monday. He has named his most important, the finance minister. That is likely to be Mr. Shunichi Suzuki. And there is going to be one difference to Abe policy, which is namely, it's not going to be full free market. There is an expectation that he's going to actually broaden, very similar to I would say probably Trump, rather than to say Biden. He's not going to give freebies, but he's trying to reduce the tax burden, and also to see whether the middle class can be given the much needed impetus from a tax point of view so that the consumption can still be sustained. It's very clear that China is a focus. You are going to see increased GDP allocation to the defense budget. You can also see artificial intelligence, and this whole kind of EV technology is going to be, again, the centerpiece of the focus. The number 300,000 is just basically to highlight that where Japan is heading as a priority as it begins to get out of COVID and open its economy with the new man at the helm.
South Korean Prime Minister says an early Moon Kishida summit is needed. Kim Jong-un offers to restore inter-Korean hotline in October. China bid to Russian assault helicopters a threat to Taiwan. Philippines defense chief says they were urged by China to drop its US defense pact. Australia to ease international border restrictions from November. Sridharji, looks like November 1st or thereabout seems to be a good date for a lot of the travel restrictions to ease, not just in Australia, but I think I'm hearing also from other countries. Your thoughts, G?
I think that that is a pretty good summary and pretty good kind of headline understanding, namely to say that people are getting better control, people are vaccinating more people, so we seem to be moving, well towards that outcome, notwithstanding the fact some of the continued challenges in various markets. Asia is clearly on its way. There are three important headline news in terms of what's happening in Asia. The vacuum of the U.S. policy is forcing King Jong Un to basically say, I don't need United States. Let me open up the hotline and directly deal with the South Korean government. And South Korean government seems to be open. So therefore, there's some communication which is going to put U.S. in a bit of a limbo in terms of a policy making. While they do that, they continue to fire their supersonic missiles and long range missiles. Basically, it's almost like saying, I'm here, why nobody is paying attention to me. That seems to be, going on. And it's very clear that China playing a surreptitious policy and exerting pressure on Philippines to say, don't sign the bilateral accord that you have with, don't renew the accord that you have with United States. And the Philippines says no holds of it, and we are going to do it because we need to have our what you call as the Scarsbury Shoals as well as the Spratly Islands to be protected because you are encroaching. And strange but not surprised, which is South Korean PM says we need to have conversations now that Abe has left. The hawkish Abe has left, so we probably have some mechanism by which we can patch up our relation. So South Korean Moon Jae is wanting an early summit with Mr. Kishida. Remember that the South Korea Japan is having a huge impact in terms of United States creating this trilateral tie-up or trilateral what you call partnership, another trilateral partnership in the region, which is U.S., South Korea, Japan. Korea and Japan have not kind of reconciled to their differences, but this seems to be again a headline good news to keep the Chinese away.
Germany probes multiple China made smartphone types over security fears, including Xiaomi. Hungary's Orban hits ZEC campaign trail to pledge support for PM Babis or Babis, I don't know how exactly to pronounce it. EU and UK urge Russians to commit to net zero carbon emissions. Sridharji, before we go into this, I want to tell our viewers to watch our program with Elmer Yuen on some of these things because according to Elmer, most of the technology comes from Huawei underlying in many of these products, and Huawei has a call home kind of technology that essentially extracts all the information from your devices. Siddhaji, your thoughts, sir.
Um, just my thoughts on the German probe relates to why were you sleeping all this time? Because did you wake up because there is a potential change in government? So they were very Chinese accommodative policy. And now you find that they are beginning to probe because many of them have, they believe, security breaches, which has data going into China. So as you pointed out, and as probably Elmer has pointed out, this is the reason why Huawei was banned in the United States. This is the reason why, I'm talking about going back to 1999, 98. When as a banker, I was I was talking about our banks using IT companies in India had one of the important requirements, which is you cannot have servers with Huawei technologies. It had to be Cisco if you wanted to be a preferred vendor of this. Is I'm talking about 25 years ago, 23, 24 years ago. So today you find that all these technologies have some embedded Huawei capabilities which have inherent leakages in terms of security, or better word is they spy on everything that you do at various levels. Not surprising that Germany is probing it. Hungary, the election of Hungary that you touched on, it's around more going towards the right because of all the problems that EU is going through. So Hungary's Orban is supporting, Czech Prime Minister on Babi on his campaign. This U.S. and EU and UK urging Russia to meet the climate EPA targets is a red herring, because on one side you are sending your troops and your navy. On the other side you are telling the Russians to cut their carbon emissions. I just don't know how this is going to be even practically feasible.
And viewers, a shout out. I've got most of this stuff captured in a fictional form in this book of mine, Who Painted My State Purple. And this might be coming in very soon to many households in paperback form. So stay tuned as we give you updates. And let's move on. Putin and Erdogan hold Syria defense talks. Turkey also keen to deepen ties from submarines to space. Sridharji, the space vacated by the United States in the Middle East, West Asia, what have you, it is available for occupation. Is it going to be Russia, or is it going to be Turkey, or is it going to be Russia through Turkey? Your thoughts, please.
It is going to be all three. Russia will occupy spots where it believes it has strategic interests. Turkey will assert its rights because it's Erdogan thinks Ottoman Empire is back, so he is lifting and building his own capabilities. Then you have Iran taking positions in various spots, and they believe they are a leader, the leader of the new world. The amazing thing is the West Asian nations dominated by countries such as Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, uh, what you call UAE, Kuwait, etc. They seem to be much more focused around the economic. And you see a lot of economic expansion activities taking place around what they traditionally called as the West Asian. They've also patched up the relationship with Israel. So you see more positive. It's not about territorial expansion. It is about the growth within the territory that they manage. Whereas these other three countries, which is Iran, Russia, and Turkey, they are trying to usurp power by making sure that there is a clear power vacuum, as you outlined.
And tensions mount as Iran moves forces close to the Azerbaijan border. Iran's finance minister says war with Israel already started. The fire that was reported occurring at the IRCG secret missile base is one such instance. Lapid to open Israel's first embassy in Bahrain. Remember, viewers, we have been telling you about normalization of relations between Israel and UAE and then Bahrain, and perhaps, who knows, Saudi Arabia very soon. Sridharji, your thoughts?
I think you, on the last point, which is namely, you really have hit the nail. We have been talking about the West Asia Israel peace accord as well as the trade expansion. They already have an embassy in UAE, and now they are going to open an embassy in Bahrain. By the way, there is a very big Expo 2020 that kicked off in UAE. Israel has a very big pavilion. Imagine 10 years ago, even conceptualizing that Israel has a footprint in UAE just tries to tell you how the world has evolved. As far as the Iran Israel is concerned, again, the power vacuum is visible. I think there's a confrontation that is looming. IRCG stands for Iran's Revolutionary Council Guard. This is the most prestigious court forces. Obviously, at a secret missile base, there was a fire. This is Israel reporting. So it obviously means another sabotage or some remote AI-controlled gun or AI-controlled missile doing its damage in that part. And Mr. Bennett has stated that the war is already on, and Iran's foreign minister has stated there is a war that is already started. They're getting ready. All this simply implies is that Iran, Iraq, what we call as the Three Eyes region, seems to be potent and volatile by way of activities, but it's not auguring well for the general peace and stability in the region. Mind you, if from there, the next is Iran into Afghanistan.
And the United States and Qatar target Hezbollah financial network with sanctions. Sridharji, Hezbollah has been active in Palestine as well as Gaza, West Bank, Israel, and what have you. So there seems like a concerted attempt to kind of limit them and try to strangle them so that all these, misadventures that it indulges in, the PLA, this is Palestine Liberation Army, not the Chinese one, will be curtailed. Your thoughts, Ji?
My thoughts are that there are three important elements that constitutes movement of all this what you call as the jihadi or terrorist or illegal activities, and the foremost among them is a financial network that operates outside, that moves money, and that money is required for the purchase of equipment that is sold in what you call illegal markets. So, what the US and Qatar government is doing is that remember why Qatar? Because Qatar was probably temporarily home to Taliban, and possibly also they were entertaining some of the Iran, Iraqi delegations in terms of the peace accords that were to take place. So the Qataris are saying that they will collaborate with United States in terms of financial restrictions. That in turn will prevent this illegal trafficking of arms. That then finally moves to the illegal trafficking of oil in the case of these territories, in some of these territories, particularly Syria, Lebanon, Iran, and that specific Iraqi border. Then the other area is obviously the illicit movement of drugs and financing of those drugs, which again require financial networks. So clearly there is a focus. The question is how effective are they in enforcement? It remains to be seen.
And for those of you who may not know this, I believe Qatar has the highest per capita income in that area. Sridharji, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And
Smaller population, smaller population, higher volume of gas, which is a premium, and they are one of the biggest suppliers. Sorry, sir. Yeah, that is the consequence.
yes, sir. And let's take a look at market news now. Stock futures fell in early morning trading on Friday after the S&P notched its worst month since March 2020. The Dow Jones dropped 262 points and both S&P and Nasdaq traded in negative territory. US's 10-year treasury yield dropped below 1.5% to 1.482%, and oil was trading at $75.01 and Brent at $78.32. Your inputs on markets, and then we can do a wrap.
The markets are, as I speak, just can I quickly take a look? The markets, futures are pointing to a high as we speak. The Dow is up around 36 points. This is futures. No, the Dow is up 150 points. Nasdaq futures is up around 36 points, and the S&P futures is up around 15 points. This is after a glorious fall in the last 5 days of September. September was one of the worst months by way of performance. We were having 1.54% in the 10-year, and that seems to have fallen below 1.5%. And the energy prices are around sub 80. They went past $80. What does this mean? One, inflation. What does this mean? That this also implies that this money that is going in is creating problems. Three, they created false expectations on this huge stimulus. The stimulus would have come in, and to some extent, the cash would have come in to meet the demands, but then it is being tied up because of the non-cash reasons. Most of the stuff is locked up, not because the stimulus will not be introduced. Most of it is locked up because you don't have abortion bill, you don't have amnesty bill, you don't have climate accord bill, you don't have expansion of the Medicare program bill, you don't have this, that, and so on, but nothing to do with the fiscal side. All this is contributing to the continued gyrations in the markets, and we may begin to see those same gyrations as we get into October, unless the Democrats get out of their deep and entrenched beliefs and allow the money to flow through into the much needed sectors of the economy. That's my wrap on the markets, sir.
Thank you very much. And viewers will be back most likely on Sunday morning at 11 a.m. IST to take a look at in more detail about the markets this week and also at some other news. And we are thinking of doing a slight change for the month of October in terms of how we deliver DGI to you. And we will keep you posted on that. But it's most important that you help us by liking and also by clicking on the notification, that is the bell button, as soon as you can if you have not already done so. But every program, if you like it as soon as you start watching, that helps us spread this thing farther and wider. Those few words, thank you very much for joining. Sridharji, thanks a lot, and we'll be back again Sunday morning. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful Friday and Saturday.
And before I sign off, stay tuned for Professor RV's take on whether we even need state governments in India. And also on Saturday, we are going to be talking with Major Madan Kumar. And I will tell you what the topic is in a little bit of time. Do join us at 9 p.m. IST. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Let me reaffirm Sree Iyer's sentiments and comments. The program runs on advertising revenue. Pressing that button and sponsoring and helping us keeps the flag flying. And thank you once again for all your support.